Hello friends, my name is Jess and welcome back to my channel, Books Past Bedtime, and welcome to Vlogmas. So today I wanted to do a little recommendation video. One of my favorite tropes is the grumpy sunshine trope. I feel like we see this so much in romance, but I feel like it is a classic for a reason. It's always fun. I always love a good opposites attract sort of romance, and I love seeing a grumpy ah humbug character cracked by their sunshiny counterpart. That is what this video is about, except you're on my channel, so every single book on this list is queer. These are my top 10 queer grumpy sunshine romance book recommendations, so let's just hop right into it. In no particular order, the first book on my list is Written in the Stars by Alexandria bellefleur. This book follows Darcy and Elle, who in the first chapter go on a blind date together, and it does not go so well. Darcy and Elle are clearly opposites, and Elle actually ends up spilling her wine all over Darcy's dress. They both leaving thinking it's pretty much a disaster, but Darcy's brother Brendan is actually the one that set them up, and he really wants to know how it went. Darcy really wants Brendan to stop meddling in her love life, so she tells him it went really well. And Brendan and Elle actually work together, so when Brendan expresses this to Elle is like, what the hell? Darcy begs Elle to play along because she just really wants to get out of these awkward blind dates. Elle agrees because she wants Darcy to help her navigate her own overbearing family for the holidays. So we also have a little bit of fake dating action going on, and of course throughout the course of the story, Darcy and Elle realize that they complement each other really well and end up falling in love. This is such a delightful romance, and I really loved watching sunshiny Elle crack grumpy Darcy, make her see the good and the positive in life and how to have a little bit of fun, how to let loose a little bit, and their relationship in general was just super cute. I loved all the characters in this, all the tropes were done super well. It just is one of those books that gives you a bubbly, warm, happy feeling, and I love it for that. This is definitely one of my favorite grumpy sunshine romance recommendations. Honestly, one of the books that inspired me to make this list in the first place. The next book I want to talk about is one that I read pretty recently, and that is Total Creative Control by Joanna Chambers and Sally Malcolm. This is a male-male contemporary romance following Aaron and Lewis. Aaron is actually Lewis's PA, and Lewis works on this famous TV show. Aaron was actually originally a fanfic writer for this TV show. He's a huge fan, so when this job opportunity comes about, he's very excited for it, and he ends up being the only PA that can ever deal with Lewis. So he's been working with Lewis for 4 years. Aaron is very bubbly, happy, bright character, whereas Lewis is kind of grumpy and introverted and stubborn, and they balance each other so well. They're very funny together, and they are very close friends, but when they start working together, Lewis sets up this rule that there is no romantic relations to ever happen between the two of them. So even though Aaron has had a crush on Lewis for forever, he has never acted on it because he doesn't want to break this rule, and Lewis is too stubborn, oblivious to realize how much he is in love with Aaron until something happens where Aaron decides to move on from working with Lewis. This kind of makes Lewis wake up and realize what he is missing and that he really desperately needs Aaron in his life. This was a super fun, cute romance. I really liked these two together. I also really liked the conversations in this book around fandom and fanfic writing because, like I mentioned, Aaron is a fanfic author, and there's some really interesting conversations between the two of them, especially because Lewis is actually the creator and the writer of the TV show that Aaron writes fanfic for, and Aaron also kind of ends up working for the show and influencing where Lewis takes the show. I don't know, it's a really cool fandom setting, so I really enjoyed that part of the book. And also, obviously, I loved the romance. This is quintessential grumpy sunshine trope. It was done super well in this book, and I really enjoyed it, so I definitely would recommend this one if you think it sounds good. And of course, I couldn't make this video without talking about Delilah Green Doesn't Care by Ashley Herring Blake. This is a female-female contemporary romance following Delilah and Claire. Delilah swore she would never return to her hometown after she moves to New York City to become a photographer, but she is being bribed to photograph her stepsister Astrid's wedding by her stepmother, so she agrees because it's a lot of money. And when she's back in town, she ends up running into Claire, who is Astrid's maid of honor and childhood best friend. Sparks fly like never before, but Delilah does not want something to tie her down to this town, and she hates her family, she hates her stepsister, she hates her stepmother. How can she like Claire? How can she be involved in this situation? And I really loved it. And as you can probably tell from the cover, these two embody the grumpy sunshine trope. Delilah is definitely very cynical, very grumpy, whereas Claire is so positive, just always sees the bright side of the situation. Such a sunshiny, wonderful, lovely character, and they just balance each other out and complement each other so well. And I really love this story so much. It's such a beautiful one. If you haven't picked it up already, you really need to. The next book I want to recommend is Kiss and Cry by Keira Andrews. This is an enemies to lovers male-male ice skating romance. This book follows Henry and Theo, who have always always been rivals on the ice and off the ice. They don't really like each other off the ice either because their personalities are so very different. Henry is so serious and regimented and it just like takes no shit. Is the kind of guy who has no fun. He's just trying to get to the Olympics and leave him alone. Theo, on the other hand, is kind of like the life of the party. He's very bubbly. He's extroverted. He's outgoing. He is also trying to go for the Olympics. Henry and Theo don't usually train in the same facility. They don't have the same coach, but when something terrible happens to Theo's coach, he needs a new coach because it's the year before the Olympics, so he has to have somebody coaching him. So he ends up coming to Henry's rink. Henry is not happy about this. He does not want to be working with Theo, especially because he's his direct competition and also because he hates him. But the more time they spend together, the more they get to know each other, the more they realize they might complement each other amazingly and that this hatred is actually just explosive sexual chemistry. I always compare this book to From Luke Off with Love by Mariana Zapata because it is very similar. It's not partner skating. They are still individual skaters, obviously, but it's the same kind of tropes going on in this book. The grumpy sunshine, the enemies to lovers, the ice skating, but this book is better. One, because it's gay. Two, because it actually has good smut in it. This is slow burn though, so I will warn you, but it does have more smut in it than From Luke Off with Love. Starts around the 50-60% mark, and it is actually genuinely really good and not cringy. So that's my pitch for that. This book is so good. It is one of my favorites that I've read on Kindle Unlimited this year, and it is definitely one of my favorite queer grumpy sunshine romances. For sure. The next book I want to recommend is Love and Other Disasters by Anita Kelly. This book follows Dahlia and London, who are contestants on a cooking competition show. This is definitely an opposites attract romance. Dahlia is kind of like, I guess what you could describe as quirky, and she's really bubbly and fun, whereas London is definitely more reserved and quiet, and they kind of get off on the wrong foot at the start, but again, the more time they spend together, the more they come to really like one another. They both are on this cooking competition show to prove something. Dahlia just recently got divorced, and she wants to kind of make her own way in the world, prove that she is a good chef, whereas London just recently came out as non-binary, so they are trying to prove to their family that they are like still the same person, still capable. So there's a lot riding on this competition, but they both really can't stay away from one another because they're just so drawn to one another, and I just really liked this romance. It was so sweet. The steam was nice. I thought it was funny, and I just really liked these two together. I also just really loved how the non-binary rep was handled in this book. Sometimes I feel like there's lots of like transphobia going on in books, and there was some in this, but I liked how it was done off page and just reference. Like, it wasn't so traumatic and jarring and like on page aggression. It was just like alluded to. I don't know, it was just done in more of like a sensitive way, because I really feel like this book is like queer happiness, you know, which I appreciated. It was like light and fluffy and super cute, and I really loved it. Okay, I have one more contemporary recommendation, and then the rest are going to be fantasy books. So my last contemporary recommendation is Read Between the Lines by Rachel Lacey. This book follows Rosie and Jane. Rosie is the bubbly, sweet, sunshiny owner of a bookstore. The problem is that her bookstore is being closed because her landlord wants to develop the land into something else. Enter Jane Breslin, whose family owns the landlord management company that owns Rosie's bookstore. Jane is the one that actually delivers the notice to Rosie that her building is being condemned or closed down or whatever. They start off a very contentious relationship. Even though they're attracted to one another, there's just too much baggage between them. But this book also includes the anonymous trope, because Rosie and Jane are unbeknowingly online friends because Jane is an author of Rosie's favorite lesbian romance novels. They talk all the time online and are falling in love with each other online, but have no idea that they know each other in person and that they're like mortal enemies in person. So there are so many good tropes in this book. Obviously the enemies to lovers trope, the anonymous trope, as well as the grumpy sunshine trope. Jane is very like shy and reserved, whereas Rosie is outgoing and bubbly, so they're definitely kind of opposites attract. And I just love the like tension and the angst and the pining throughout the story, but the back and forth of like, you're doing this awful thing to me, how can I justify that with the person you truly are? And overall, I just thought this was a super sweet, swoony romance. When I was reading it, I did not want to put it down. I ate it up and I really loved it. Before we get into the fantasy recommendations, I also wanted to recommend Something Fabulous by Alexis Hall. This book is a Regency romp. It follows Valentine and and Bonnie. Valentine's father always expected him to actually marry Bonnie's sister. There was kind of like a long-standing engagement set up between the two of them since they were children. Valentine goes to fulfill this promise and marry Bonnie's sister, but upon announcing that he's going to do so, Bonnie's sister ends up running away. Valentine and Bonnie end up going after her, trying to find her, bring her back for different reasons. Bonnie because he cares about his sister, and Valentine because he wants to fulfill his promise. But along the way, Valentine realizes that perhaps it's Bonnie that he wants to marry after all. And it never really even occurred to him that two men could be together. There is the delightful awakened sexuality trope in this book as well, and forced proximity, all kinds of fun tropes, but the grumpy sunshine trope is definitely very prevalent. Valentine is very much like a grumpy person. He's always kind of kept to himself. He doesn't really like to interact with people a lot, whereas Bonnie is like just a very like exuberant, bubbly character who is just always having fun. Very opposite, and I feel like they complement each other very well. Bonnie ends up teaching Valentine how to live a little, and Valentine teaches Bonnie to kind of take himself and his emotions and wants seriously. So I really liked seeing their relationship develop. This book is definitely very ridiculous though. It's very over the top, it's very campy, but I thought it was really funny. I definitely love this one. I don't know if it's for everyone, but it definitely is a very good example of the grumpy sunshine trope, and I don't know, I loved it. So I think you should read it. Alright, now I have 3 fantasy recommendations for you. First of which is A Marvellous Light by Freya Marske. This is a male-male historical fantasy romance. This book follows Robin and Edwin. Robin is a normal human who accidentally gets assigned a job in the magical ministry, being the liaison between magic and regular people. Robin had no idea magic existed, so when he comes to work in the morning, he's in for a shock. Edwin is actually his like correspondent with the magical world, and he comes in and he's like, who are you and what are you doing here? Turns out the person that had Robin's post previously has gone missing, so Edwin and Robin team up to try and find him, and he's gone missing because he's tangentially involved in this conspiracy regarding this object called the Last Contract. The Last Contract is something that was split into 3 pieces and hidden. This like quasi-government group are trying to reunite these pieces of the Last Contract because if they do so, they will be able to control all the magic in Britain. So once they find this out, Robin and Edwin are intent on trying to stop this. Along the way, Robin gets cursed, and Edwin is like the only person who knows how to help Robin out, so they're trying to figure out how to break this curse as well, while all at the same time having this lovely romance between them. This book is filled with like pining and angst, which is some of my favorite kind of romances to read, so I just ate this one up. I really loved it, and it definitely is grumpy sunshine. Robin is the sunshine character in this situation. Even though like life keeps throwing him all of these crazy things, he just is such a positive, lovely person, whereas Edwin is very cynical, very reserved, and very serious, and I feel like just Robin brings out the life in him again, and it's just so sweet and cute, and I loved their romance. It was so lovely. This book is just so much fun, and it's so unique, I feel like, but I also feel like this book gives like TJ Klune vibes. TJ Klune actually blurbed it. So it definitely has similar vibes to his books. If you liked The House in the Cerulean Sea, I feel like this magic system in the world is kind of similar, even though there's not like monsters or like other beings in this world. Fantasy elements are similar, which is the perfect segue to my next recommendation, which is Under the Whispering Door by TJ Klune. This book follows our main character Wallace, and at the very beginning of this book, Wallace passes away. He finds himself as a ghost watching his funeral, and then he's come and collected by this lady who takes him to this tea shop, and in this tea shop is Hugo, and Hugo is tasked with helping ghosts cross over into the other world. He helps them come to terms with the life that they lived so that they can feel comfortable putting that to rest and moving on. But Wallace, it turns out, was kind of a horrible person in life, so he's having a lot of trouble reconciling with the fact that he's dead and he doesn't get to correct any of his mistakes looking back. Wallace was a very mean, nasty person in life. He did a lot of bad things, and Hugo really kind of helps him see that and come to terms with that and reconcile that in himself, potentially with others. Hugo is just like a little ball of sunshine. He is the sweetest cinnamon roll of a character, and I love him so much. And Wallace loves Hugo too because they have this cute little relationship. I feel like of all of these books, this one is probably the least romance heavy. This book is more kind of about dealing with grief and taking another look at life and like how you interact with other people, but it definitely does have a romance at its core between Hugo and Wallace, and it is definitely a grumpy sunshine romance. Wallace is a huge grump. a huge Scrooge character, whereas Hugo, like I said, is just a little cinnamon roll. And I just love how they like balance each other out and how Hugo helps Wallace. And I don't know, this book is so cute. I loved it so much. This is one of my favorites of the year for sure. And I sobbed reading it. I sobbed so hard reading this book. It is incredible, so good. And then last but not least, I really felt like I couldn't make this video without including Edin by Lily Mayne. This is the second book in the Monstrous series. It really is just the epitome of grumpy sunshine. This book follows Edin, who is a big purple monster, and Hunter, who is a human, as they fall in love. So if you didn't know, this series takes place in a post-apocalyptic United States where monsters have crossed over into the human world. Most of the people in the US live in these coastal cities that are controlled by the military, but the middle of the country is called the Wastes, and it's like a no man's land out there. Monsters and humans try and coexist. If humans don't want to live under the thumb of the military, they live out in the Wastes in these like strongholds to try and band together, but it is kind of a free-for-all. There's monsters all over the place, which Hunter and Charlie are traveling together because they work for the military and they're on like a reconnaissance mission, but Charlie gets captured and taken away by these random monsters, and Hunter finds himself in a pickle. He's in like this hole in the ground and he doesn't really know how to get out, but then Edin like hangs his head over the hole and he's like, hey, can I help you out? And he does. Edin has nothing better to do, so he offers to help Hunter find Charlie. Hunter does not want help finding Charlie because Hunter is the biggest grumpy pants there ever was, and he just wants to do it by himself, and he's like, no, like screw off. And Edin's like, okay, but he just follows him and helps him out anyway. And Edin is just like, nothing phases him. He is just always in a good mood. He is just always cracking jokes and having a good time, and he just thinks it's so funny to irritate Hunter because Hunter is irritated by everything. But of course, along the way, they fall in love. I don't know if this is weird to have like favorite smut scenes of the year, but one of my favorite smut scenes of the year is in this book. I think about it a lot. I love this series so much, and Hunter and Edin are one of my favorite couples in it, and they definitely are like textbook grumpy sunshine. Like if anyone is grumpy sunshine on this list, it is Hunter and Edin. They are fabulous. This book is fabulous and I love it so much. And if you love this trope, honestly, you have to read it just for like that reason. There's many reasons to read this book, but it really is truly grumpy sunshine. And those are my 10 favorite grumpy sunshine queer romances. Please let me know if you found any to add to your TBR. I would love to know. Or if you have any recommendations for me, I would love your recommendations as well. Also, if you've made it this far, definitely leave me a Christmas tree emoji for bookmas/vlogmas. Also, please like this video and subscribe to my channel if you feel so inclined. I am posting a new video every single day of December, so there's plenty of content where this came from, and I hope you will join me. Also, make sure you check the description for links to all of these books, as well as links to my social media. I'm most active on Instagram and Goodreads other than on YouTube if you would like to follow me over there. And I think that's all for me today, so thank you so much for watching this video, and I will see you in the next one. Bye.